Now, with Christmas just a few weeks away, now's as good a time as any to start buying gifts. For anyone looking for something different, then African art is definitely worth considering. In recent years, the continent's art market has undergone a dramatic boom, attracting serious collectors from Europe, the Far East and North America. And you don't need a deep pocket to find something affordable. How do I know? Well, I'm joined by the artist and fine art curator Ed Cross. He's holding an online auction of African contemporary art in London. A very good day to you, Ed. I mean, look, I get different responses to this question when I broach it, but why has there been this explosion in popularity for African art?
I think it's partly just, to be honest, it's partly fashion, and we've had a lot of interest in China before, India before, and it's Africa's turn now.
So it's a cycle, basically.
It's a cycle, but also I think it's because Africa's been neglected by the West for so long. There's a huge amount of catching up that's going on right now. And also, I think there's just the depth of talent that there is in Africa is actually just coming to the fore now.
Right, so fashion trends tend to have a very brief life, but given that Africa has been neglected for so long, it's a huge continent, there's plenty of talent, then it's not really likely to be a fashion. It's likely to morph into something else, something a bit more sustainable.
No, you're absolutely right. It's also a geopolitical factor as well, because obviously I think the centre of gravity in the world is moving south big time, and we're seeing more and more, a huge amount of investment going on in Africa, and lots of activity there.
Right, so geopolitics, one thing that's perhaps triggered the interest. Are there other elements that have done it as well?
I think just film, the other areas of art, of the arts, music, dance, and literature as well. And also I think the diaspora plays a big part in this, the increasing role of people from the diaspora in the world generally.
So before you had this happy collision of circumstances, so to speak, people like you, because you have this incredible interest and knowledge of the art scene, you would have been seen as perhaps a bit strange, because here you were buying art from artists who didn't have the same currency perhaps as their European counterparts, but in actual fact, you were ahead of the game.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, I started in this business, as it were, about 10 years ago. And my belief was that Africa's completely underrated by the rest of the world. I lived in Africa for many years. I'd seen what had happened in India and China with the markets there. So I was convinced that we were going to see the same thing with African art, and indeed we're seeing it now. So
who is doing the buying? Are we talking about mainly private collectors, or is it a combination of private collectors and galleries?
Some galleries, some big private collectors. We've got collectors from Africa itself, from America, from the Far East. We're also looking at museums, of course, and the Tate Modern is buying considerable amounts of African art now. That's something quite new. That's started over the last 3 years. Museums like Brooklyn Museum in the States, lots of museums actually are now getting in on it.
And it's interesting as well that you said there are a lot of buyers within Africa, so it's almost as if they're trying to hold on to that heritage before it actually migrates, so to speak.
Yes, you're right. It's been a slow process in some ways, but we're now seeing Lagos particularly, a lot of activity down there. And you're also seeing African buyers actually buying back work that, say, Europeans might have bought earlier on. So that's the great thing about an auction, where you get works traded across the world.
And let's talk about the auction that you're holding, because it's an online affair and the bidding kicks off big time on the 4th of December, as I understand it.
That's right.
So in terms of what is up for grabs, what is there?
Well, we've got 25 lots. It's quite a small auction. It's focused on young what we call young visionaries. So the kind of slightly less established artists, although some of them are actually quite established, but they're under a certain age range. We have works by, for example, Aboudia from Côte d'Ivoire, who is now collected by Saatchi. We have Peterson Kamwasi from Kenya. We have the price ranges, as we say, is from £500 up to somewhere around £8,000.
So it's actually quite a reasonable band in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And where is it being held? Is it being held at your gallery and people can just basically log on and follow it?
We're having a viewing at in Dover Street, 23 Dover Street, on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And if you log on to theauctionroom.com, you'll find all the details on there.
The actual pieces themselves that are being auctioned, are they bound together by a theme or are they pretty disparate?
They're quite disparate, but again, it's to do with age ranges and the kind of, the degree of establishment of the artist.
Mm. And in terms of the importance of the online facility, so to speak, what does that do in terms of opening up artists to this wider dynamic?
I think it's really important because anybody obviously can bid from anywhere, and the actual bidding process sort of imitates the traditional auction process. Mm. So you can log on, you can either bid in advance or you can log on at 2 o'clock on Thursday next week and bid as you would in a normal auction room from anywhere in the world. And
so this is the last auction for this year, but there are more next year. Is it 3 you hold each year?
That's right, yeah. We have one on photography coming up in May, and we have another one in March, which will be a sort of a bigger version of this one. OK,
so plenty to look forward to. But Ed Cross, as ever, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on This Day Live.
Thanks very much, Julie.
Thank you.